But welcome everybody. Be sure to hit the like button. Be sure to hit the subscribe button.
I remember in middle school when you felt self-conscious if you were the last one to go through puberty. That really went topsy-turvy, didn't it?
Sometimes the Hasbara, it's too much explaining yourself and it's too apologetic.
Be sure to hit the notifications bell.
I actually do believe Israel won't just bomb countless civilians.
Be sure to tweet this out. Be sure to put this up on your Facebook.
You have to be kind to people. Be kind to the guys in this mess in the first place.
Put this up on your Reddit.
Chile is a country.
Be sure to cut and paste, a link to this to go into your favorite Facebook chat group.
It's good to see so many normal people in here.
Now, spanking isn't just my deep, dark personal secret. It's America's deep, dark secret.
I've never seen it explained so simply anywhere.
Put this on WhatsApp. Put this on Telegram. Put this on your favorite messenger app.
Hello and welcome to the Untitled Anarchist Seagull channel. I'm your host, an Untitled Anarchist Seagull called Elise. How's everybody doing today? So, one thing that I kind of have to get off my chest a bit, because I was just thinking about it, I had a few conversations that really kind of brought it to the fore, is this situation that exists where in the US right now, one of the leading topics of conversation in the trans community is getting the hell out of the country because it seems like maybe it is mortally dangerous to stay in the country. There are studies that most recent one indicates that 400,000 trans people are internally displaced in the US, and it was a small study, and maybe that number is a little bit low, maybe it's a little bit high, but anyone who's been paying attention to what goes on in the community knows it's going to be a lot. I mean, a year before that study, there was another one that said that there were 240,000 trans people who had to flee their home states in order to find some kind of relative safety someplace else in another part of the country. And what gets me about all this, and why I'm talking about it, why I felt a need to say something about it here, is it's not even a fucking headline. Like, if you do not follow trans journalists who specifically report on trans issues, you wouldn't know that this is going on. It is getting no media attention. Like, your sort of dominant media, like liberals, don't say a thing about it. It is not being treated with any kind of urgency, any sense of crisis. It's just totally overlooked. An entire fucking demographic in this country, a small one, but still, like, the entire demographic is in well-founded fear for their lives, and the people who are supposedly the opposition, the people who tell us that they're the ones who are going to defend democracy and all that, they don't really have shit to say about it for the most part. There's just no interest. There's no media interest. I mean, the multiple red flag warnings that came from the Lemkin Institute about literal genocide against trans people in the US and the increasing risk of it also got absolutely no fucking attention. Now, I mean, that's partially probably because a lot of liberals are probably salty because that Lemkin Institute also said the same thing, pointed out the genocide in Gaza. So, but yeah, so there's this entire demographic in increasing, ever-intensifying fear for their lives, fleeing their home states, talking about fleeing the country or already doing it, and it gets basically no attention outside that community, which is fucked up and should not be the case. So I just thought I would just mention that. Moving on to other things, I saw a video that was in response to this video in my recommendations. I haven't actually looked at the video itself yet, but the video it's in response to has also shown up in my recommendations. It said it's called "Debunking Every Anti-Communist Argument Ever," And so somebody by the name of Alcoholic Horse 49, who I've never heard of, got 183,000 views with a video called "This Communist Didn't Debunk Anything." And so I thought maybe we could just have a little look at that, just to start out. Let me know if I need to adjust the audio at all. How's everybody doing?
Communism, the greatest economic system ever devised by humanity, which is precisely the reason why the majority of the countries who previously used it stopped, and the ones that...
Wow, we're really starting out with some absolutely just totally fresh talking points here.
didn't are neck
Sawadee ka, Adria French.
deep in civil unrest, crippling poverty, corruption, or all three.
Well, I wonder if that is possibly something going on in capitalist societies as well. Like, I wonder, you know, what would be really interesting for the purposes of this discussion is whether actually the countries that at the very least said that they were trying to be a transitional stage on the way to communism actually improved the situation in terms of things like poverty and instability and stuff like that. And if maybe when those states collapsed, that what came afterwards, the supposed like capitalist liberation, the end of history and everything, ended up being an unmitigated economic, social, civilization level catastrophe. But I'm sure we're going to have some great arguments. I mean, Alcoholic Horse, never heard of him, but he wouldn't fail us.
I wanted to make this video for a little while, ever since I saw this video from a
spooky, scary socialist. That's who did it. That's who did the original video.
spooky, scary socialist in my recommendation. If the data points I've given to Google suggest that I'm a socialist, please just give me the gun so I can fucking shoot myself. I was promised that this video would debunk all of the arguments that filthy, greedy, evil, white, racist capitalists make to hold up their evil, white, racist status quo.
Okay, I mean, all of them would be... I mean, that would be a real challenge. That would be a long video because there's so many of them. But I'm rooting for spooky, scary socialist here. Let's see what we get.
Let's just say that I was thoroughly
more? I just turned it up a second ago, but I can turn it up a little bit more if you want.
Disappointed. First thing in the video, he says that preaching his socialist dribble repeatedly gets the same talking points levied at him. Now,
I'm sure that's what he says too. That when he probably started out and said, "When preaching my socialist dribble, I get the same talking points every time." I'm sure that's what he called it.
you'd think that the crowd chanting, "Boo, get off the stage," would let you know to haul ass. What do I know? I'm just a filthy capitalist.
Citation needed.
If you're a hardline Marxist-Leninist or Rosa backstabbing suckdem, you already know what it's like to advocate for left-leaning policies on the internet. And by left-leaning, I really mean anything to the left of Reagan. It's just a constant barrage of Venezuela, Animal Farm, and human nature. Just a waterfall of memorized talking points internalized since birth and spat out like the world's wrongest...
Oh, so we're gonna see some non-memorized talking points.
Even the tamest of tame suckdems are getting hit with the Venezuela line, which shows just how far right everything has gone.
Yeah, and the Venezuela line itself is nonsense, which I'm sure we're going to be talking about, because the thing is, until the U.S. started just crushing the economy there through so-called sanctions, Venezuela was looking really fucking good, actually. There's a reason Chavez is so revered there, and it has to do with the fact that people's living standards went way up under him.
Everything has moved right. I mean, yeah, as of 2024... the pendulum is swinging back, but this video came out in 2020.
I mean, I actually would differ with that. I mean, in terms of mainstream discourse, yes. In terms of popular opinion, no. There's no evidence of that.
Was dead center in the COVID pandemic, when leftism was at its nauseating peak. I would not
dead center in the COVID. So this guy is coming to us from after the COVID pandemic? Wow, he's from the future. How... Alcoholic Horse, could you tell us, from your vantage point in the future, how did we eventually beat COVID, then end the pandemic?
I have been able to call this guy a retarded fag if I was living in 2020.
Wow, I mean, wonderful times, clearly, that you're allowed to use, just openly use slurs like that. You know, we're clearly going to get some absolutely great takes here from a guy whose apparently standard of freedom is, like, how many slurs he gets to use. Obviously, it looks like a little bit of a content warning is probably a good idea. I have not watched this video. I didn't know what else we're going to see. Spooky Scary Socialist has also reacted to this wonderful wonderful creation here.
The police... I'm sorry. The state social workers would have come to my house and told me to say trans rights 100 times while squatting on a dildo.
I love how it is among centrists and anyone to the right of centrists taken as an article of faith that we actually defunded the police somewhere in the U.S. It literally did not happen. But you will, to this day, even in like news media, supposedly objective news media, hear police defunding described as a thing that actually happened, even though there is no place whose police budget has actually been cut.
Or so I've been told.
Admittedly, this first argument is more of a misconception than anything else, and surprisingly, it tends to come from people who are...
What first argument? You seem to have skipped the first argument, Alcoholic Horse.
...to the left, and, well, sometimes people are just misinformed.
So what socialism means is the government does some things and the private industry does some things, right?
Oh god, it's Junk Uyghur. Yeah, and of course he's doing the Bernie Sanders thing. Which also is kind of the China is socialist thing. There's things... the fundamental argument is the same in both cases, interestingly.
Right? So private industry does Coca-Cola, Nike, makes your shoes. Government does other things like your police department, your fire department.
Yeah, like that is social democracy. I mean, that isn't even social democracy yet. What he's just describing is fairly standard capitalism, that the public sector does cops and things. Like, having a fire department is not socialist. Okay, it's like I'm jabroni stacking. I cannot escape jabroni stacking.
Military. So you like the military? Ah, what a socialist you are.
No.
Oh, now... sorry about that. I think, now I'm remembering that fucking quote. God, I remember this video now that...
Just, no. Basically, the argument goes that socialism is whenever the government does anything, so everything related to the government is socialist. Following this logic, libraries, welfare, fire departments, garbage removal, streetlights, policemen, the military, the CIA, FBI, and prisons are all socialist. Hopefully everyone can agree libraries are good, but grouping these things with the military, police, and prisons is ridiculous. The police is the same institution that shoots unarmed black men, incarcerates a massive amount of the population.
Oh, I'm guessing we're probably going to be seeing some fucked up things about to come here. I'm guessing that this person's love of slurs is going to be engaged again.
With murder. This type of talk comes from people who want to normalize socialism to normies by showing them that, technically, the United States already has socialism.
Guys, he's so close to getting it.
Okay, well, take us that last bit there, Alcoholic Horse.
He's this close to getting it. He's this close to understanding it. But unlike me, when I was doing it with your mom, he's a little short. Our tax dollars are going to pay for anything without our express consent, not democratic consent, but individual consent is inherently authoritarian. But we...
Like, how exactly are you distinguishing democratic consent from individual consent? And also, okay, authoritarian compared to what exactly? And what does that have to do with anything? The argument wasn't that it is or isn't authoritarian. The argument is that it's not socialist to have public services.
let these things slide because they all do more harm than good. Also, this guy's gonna die when I show him how many black people attack cops rather than vice versa.
Oh, who gives a fuck?
This is how you know this video's from 2020, because of this retarded St. Floyd virtue signal. And
oh, okay, we're getting a real feeling for this guy. I'm surprised that he hasn't actually been on the Young Turks, actually. This is the sort of person that they're courting these days.
Instead of bringing up an institution that actually provides next to no benefit, like the Department of Education.
And while I agree that normalizing socialism is good, at the same time, it's not good to basically deprive it of all meaning. So, what is socialism? Well, it's common ownership of the means of production, distribution, and exchange. Related to that is communism, which is a stateless, classless, and moneyless society with common ownership of the means of production.
Okay. Those are decent definitions. I agree with them.
This is something communists do a lot, which is
to define their terms accurately. Yes.
Hilarious. See, they know nobody in their right mind would accept communism, so they'll gas up socialism because they know that socialism is the communism, what Charmander is the Charizard.
Socialism is to communism what Charmander is to Charizard? Okay. Can anyone translate that for me, please, chat? Like, okay, I know that this is, like, some Pokemon stuff. I'm fairly certain about that. But, like, if the idea is that communists are hiding communism from people, then why exactly is Spooky Scary Socialist telling us precisely what he means by communism? That doesn't seem like hiding.
It's just in its first form.
But wait, wasn't the Soviet Union and all those other places communist? How could they be when there was still a state? Well, they were run by communist parties, so they are in the sense that they were trying to achieve it, but strictly speaking, they hadn't achieved a communist society.
No.
I mean, yes. Hello, Emily's.
No. You can't complain about people on the other side saying the same thing over and over and over again when you're doing the same shit.
Well, the issue isn't the repetition. Like, the issue... Nobody would have a problem with people saying the same thing over and over again if at least it weren't complete bullshit. The issue isn't the repetition. The issue is that these are things that have been debunked a million times.
Every time a communist opens their mouth, it's, oh, it wasn't real communism. Think of me, an overweight black guy trying to climb a tree. I grab on and try to pull myself up, but I can't do it. How many times do you think it would take me to realize that I can't do it? Oh.
Okay. So what? Well, okay. Which is what, so he thinks that people are trying to hide the idea of socialism as transitional to communism? My experience is that a lot of people speak about that quite openly, because it's kind of a fundamental aspect of theory in a lot of tendencies. Like, what the hell is this guy talking about?
According to socialists, I'd never know for sure whether I could do it until I did it. Although this isn't a really, one-to-one.
Socialism is when you don't know whether you can climb a tree.
Analogy, because, I mean, at least in real life, if I tried over and over again over, consecutive days, weeks, and months, eventually I'd build up the strength to be able to climb up the tree. But yeah.
See, this is a better analogy than he was going for.
That flawed analogy is the same unconvincing argument that people use for aliens, God, the...
Wait, the argument for aliens is that if you work hard at it, you will get aliens? The argument for God is if you work hard at it, you will get a god? Like, what the hell is he even talking about?
Simulation theory, so on and so forth. Well, I mean, you can't prove that it isn't true. No.
That is a completely different thing. Like, what the hell does this have to do with anything? Nobody's talking about proving a negative. The point that Spooky Scary Socialist is making here, kind of obviously, is that the within the meaning of the definition of communism that is very widely accepted amongst communists, none of these states that are described as communist, often by anti-communists, was communist. They were at the most trying to transition in the direction of communism. That's not the same thing. So what does this have to do with not being able to prove a negative about simulation theory and aliens?
But I can look at the data and say, statistically, it's not happening anytime soon. So,
well, what data? What what data are you talking about?
get the fuck down from there. Also, one thing I want to clear, the reason why I believe in God is because I can believe in God.
Wait, you just used God as an example of a shitty argument that people use what you were describing as a dishonest argumentative method to defend. So you're saying you actually do believe in a God, despite the fact that you yourself just said that it was a shitty argument?
While acknowledging that God's existence is an unfalsifiable theory. I can't prove that God is real any more than you can prove that he isn't. But the difference between believing in socialism and believing in God is that believing in God doesn't hurt you. Now,
it doesn't? I mean, it seems like it sometimes can. And what do you mean by believing in socialism? Because the thing is, you're using, seriously, what the hell is any of this? So, when you say you believe in God, you're saying you believe that a God exists. When somebody says they believe in socialism, they usually mean that they believe socialism would be a good idea. Those are not the same things. People who say they believe in God are not saying God would be a good idea. I mean, maybe some of them are, but...
God can be weaponized against you, but the belief itself can't hurt you. On the other hand, socialism has a long track record of doing tangible damage to people.
I wonder if organized religion has ever resulted in any kind of tangible harm to people
who believe in it, even when they don't live in a socialist society, ironically enough.
That's not
what tangible... Okay, so what tangible harm comes to people for believing in socialism when they are not living in a socialist society, though? Could you give an example? Because that sounds like you're saying that it's socialism's fault that socialists are repressed in capitalist societies.
Definition squabbling. For the sake of streamlining the video, I'll just call any country that advertises itself as communist or socialist as a communist or socialist country, even if it's a bit of an oxymoron considering the definition.
Oh, so he acknowledges that socialism is the same shit in a different toilet.
No, he is not. That is literally not what he was doing. That's what do you know what streamlining means? I don't think he knows what an analogy is. I don't think he's even gotten to knowing where it's for.
Good.
The image that comes to most people's mind when communists or socialists talk about wanting more equality is that of a bland, boring dystopia where everyone is forced to be equal. Communism would essentially force everyone to become part of a hive mind, or at least that's how the general idea goes. However, the idea that more equality means suppressing the talented elite to the common level of the masses is just wrong. When communists say we want more equality, they mean freeing the masses so they can unleash their suppressed talents. After the October Revolution, there was a flourishing of art, culture, and creativity. The futurist movement, legalization of divorce for women, and the growth of cinema were exciting developments compared to the Tsar's regime over the masses of people. It turns out liberating millions of people from the clutches of capital creates an exciting artistic society, not one where everyone is forced to be a hive mind and conform to some incorrect abstract idea of equality. Meanwhile, on capitalism, schools prepare students...
Okay, what's he gonna do with this? Because, I mean... those are pretty good points that he's making, so... I'm guessing that he's just gonna go, no!
Masters that are literally killing them and destroying their homes while the rich profit off ignoring any sort of sustainable solution. Maybe all this talk about a communist dystopia is really just an example of capitalism protecting itself?
Communism's stated goal of being able to liberate people doesn't mean jack if it's already proved it doesn't work.
Well, okay, and how is it proved it doesn't work?
The government's stated goal is to ensure the safety and prosperity of its citizens.
Which governments?
Proved it doesn't work. The government's stated goal is to ensure the safety and prosperity of its citizens, and apparently doing that requires giving $5.8 billion to Israel.
Okay, which government are we talking about? Like, what the fuck does this have to do with... What does any of this have to do with communism? Like, okay, so subsidizing Israel, bad. Okay, an unexpected good take. But what does this have to do with communism? Like, the government. So I guess he's talking about the U.S. government. How the fuck does the U.S. government come into this? The U.S. government has never claimed to be communist.
Hell yeah! Feminism's stated goal is ensuring equal rights and opportunity for women, but
I mean, I don't know that is certainly the goal of some stated goal of some feminist tendencies. Others take other views on what their exact goals are. But okay, I mean,
hijacked by people who think embracing femininity is looking like gay Kratos. Antifa's stated goal was ridding us of fascism.
Well, yes, and actually, in terms of preventing fascists from being able to organize openly, for quite a while it was working quite well. And if people hadn't slept on it, especially, you know, after the pandemic started, we would probably be in a much better situation right now.
But they haven't found much of it yet, and
I mean, actually, it isn't exactly hard to find it. I'm looking at it right now, actually.
To think that there might not be any. And the straw man of capitalism being a...
Oh, wait, so after he exploded at the idea that there isn't, that none of these states that are often called communists could really be said to be communism because communism is a stateless society, amongst other things. He's saying, actually, there is no fascism because my definition or something?
Dead-end lifestyle is stupid. Everyone hates their lives sometimes. It's the times when you don't that makes living worth it. I'm skipping...
What the fuck does that have to do with anything?
Skipping the next two sections because he does exactly what he claims to hate. Again, using the same old, tired commie arguments on the Holodomor.
Oh, okay, so he does not have a response to these things.
And Animal Farm. Mentis Wave has a way better video on the Holodomor. I highly recommend watching it after you're done with this one. The other...
Okay, so that is going to be some nonsense. Because I was just noticing who that's a response video to, and it is a response video to people who have pointed out actually the state of historical scholarship on the Soviet famine of the early 30s. And came to the conclusion after the Soviet archives were opened up that it was not intentional, that it was the result of incompetent agricultural management, which is actually sort of par for the course for these sorts of famines in post-revolutionary societies when they don't have some sort of external safety net in the form of foreign trade. Well, no, he has not actually made an argument except to say that when people repeat bullshit over and over and over again, that's the same thing as when people point out things that are true over and over again.
The other section I'm skipping is about Animal Farm, and I'm skipping it because George Orwell slander will not be tolerated in this house.
Which George Orwell slander? Because, I mean, are we talking about the fact that Orwell was actually part of a Marxist militia that shot at fascists and described himself on many occasions as a socialist? Or are we talking about, or is the supposed slander the fact that he actually named names and gave a list of communists or alleged communists to the British government at one point later in his life? Which is the slander?
Yes, I know he was a racist. Yes, I know he would have found me disgusting. I don't care. His books are goated. They're middle school reading for a reason. Cry about it.
The fact that communist countries had famines is mocked again and again, but it ignores the fact that after these famines, countries like the Soviet Union and China accomplished food security for the rest of their existence. A study called Economic Development, Political Economic System, and Physical Quality of Life compares socialist and capitalist countries based on different levels of development, looking at the physical quality of life of both. Data for the study was taken from the World Development Report of the World.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, is he going to, like, he really has not. River Rune is quite right. This drunken, alcoholic horse asshole guy has not actually made a single argument. In fact, he mostly just sort of changes the subject. And most recently, he just skipped over entire sections. Not that he has no response to them, but just he doesn't want to deal with it because it's beyond the pale. But okay, so this is, you know, these are actual studies, and these aren't studies that are relying, it's worth noting, just on, you know, published Soviet figures from the time. These are studies that were actually conducted and published, in many cases. No, well, no, some of these are 1980s studies, but other studies are also using independent information as well, using the internal unpublished figures that often, that at least in some cases, differed from published figures in the Soviet archives, and all sorts of other things.
Thing. Shockingly, it found the daily per capita calorie supply was actually higher in socialist countries than those of capitalist ones. Contrary to the much proclaimed no food, the average socialist citizen was receiving more food than their capitalist counterparts. By the way, the same publication also showed that not only did socialist countries have a higher calorie supply, they also had lower child death rates, higher life expectancy, population per physician, population per nursing person, adult literacy, and secondary education. In fact, the Physical Quality of Life Index, which is a composite...
I think he had something backwards there. I think he meant nurses per unit of population, and not population per nurse.
Derived measure shows just how superior socialist countries are to capitalist countries in terms of quality of life. The discussion section of the study goes on to say, historically there is some evidence that the discrepancies between capitalist and socialist nations have reflected varying social policies.
And one thing that they have reflected, and it's really important to note this, is the fact that these countries often before their revolutions were way behind Western Europe and the US on all developmental measures. Like, Russia, Imperial Russia was more or less on par with Brazil before 1918. They very quickly ended up surpassing Brazil, and by 1989 were, in a league of their own. That's why they had to invent the concept of the Second World.
Socialist countries have initiated major public health efforts. These initiatives have aimed toward improved sanitation, immunization, maternal and child care, nutrition, and housing. In every case, the socialist countries have also reorganized their healthcare system.
And it's worth noting, you do not have to stand every single aspect of any of these states to acknowledge that they actually they achieved some pretty amazing shit in a lot of cases. I mean, just Cuba has managed all sorts of things under the most difficult imaginable circumstances, just to name one example.
National health services based on
Okay, so is this guy going to respond to any of this, or is he just going to let the video run?
Educational opportunities also has been made priority social nations. As locally subsidized education become more widely available, literacy campaigns in countries have brought education by the second population earlier and not gone to school.
It's really funny that he brings the USSR into this.
Yeah, why would anyone bring the USSR into a discussion of socialism? Like, that is such a weird move. Like, what are you doing, spooky, scary socialist?
Let's see what the National Security Archive has to say about this.
The National Security Archive actually is a good resource. I rely on it heavily. They are a project of George Washington University, who file Freedom of Information Act requests and publish collections of declassified U.S. government documents. So what they would have on this, I mean, they're not in the business of examining the socioeconomic indicators of the Soviet Union. They, if anything, would be publishing documents, internal U.S. government documents, about the Soviet Union at various periods in history, which is okay. So this so it will literally be what the government, what the U.S. government was saying internally. So what?
Let me get my nerd glasses on.
Okay, so we're talking about the post-war 5-year plan after World War II. And the first thing that it says is the first post-war 5-year plan for 1946 to 1950 aimed to rebuild the devastated economy. Well, I wonder what it was devastated from. Also, let's see. This is a CIA. Okay, judging from the rest of the text, this is a contemporary CIA document. So the CIA at the time, they did not have the benefit of hindsight. They weren't conducting large-scale studies of the state of Soviet agriculture in the long recovery period from the devastation of World War II, because the Soviet Union got absolutely wrecked in that war. They were going based on what their intelligence sources were saying. Most of the small amount of finished intelligence disseminated to users only briefly summarized a human intelligence, or OSINT, open source intelligence report.
Being the 5-year plans.
I mean, this is a great example of just a wonderful argument. It is his first argument that he's made in this entire thing, and it amounts to the Soviet Union didn't do a great job because after they got completely devastated in World War II and Germany literally set everything on fire as they retreated back westward, that it took them longer than intended in order to recover and reach pre-war levels. Well, what happened after 1952, though? 1952 is a while ago. What happened after they actually managed that recovery? And what about before they got completely wrecked in World War II?
Modest goals for agriculture called for a 10% increase in production over the 1940s.
Oh, he's skipping over the entire first fucking paragraph, which refers to the first post-war 5-year plan and rebuilding the devastated economy. Oh no, he didn't skip the paragraph. He skipped the sentence. The sentence to explain what we're actually talking about.
The agricultural goals of the first 5-year plan.
No. What do you mean ... It's right in front of you that this is summarizing contemporary intelligence reports. And it isn't the first 5-year plan. It is the first post-World War II 5-year plan. Seriously, if you're going to lie to your audience, why are you showing them to their faces that you're lying to them? Well, yes, exactly. Well, you see, socialism doesn't work because the Soviet Union got wrecked in World War II and their economy took a while to recover, apparently. That's the argument here, except that he's decided to insult the intelligence of and just insult the basic literacy of his audience by skipping over sentences that make it clear that this is talking about the devastation of World War II and recovering from that, while keeping them right up on the screen so everybody can see them.
Plan were not met, with the CIA and others only beginning to report on it in detail early in the next decade when they received additional collection and analytical resources. Grain output did not exceed the pre-war level until 1952. Now,
okay, the pre-war level. What happened in between the war starting, as far as the Soviet Union was concerned, and 1952, though? Was there something that happened that might have been a bit of an economic setback for them?
No. That's not it. Stay with me now. Quote.
Okay, that wasn't it. That's good to know, because that definitely wasn't it.
from the U.S. Department of Agriculture's USSR Grain Policies and Data by Emily Moore, circa July 1986.
Okay. Who the hell are these people, and why are we looking at the U.S. Department of Agriculture's figures from 1986 when there are newer studies on this?
The Soviet Union consumes 218 million tons of grain a year, but produces 180 million tons. The difference makes the Soviet Union the world's largest grain importer, accounting for 20% of international grain trade.
So what? This does not actually... The question, the issue that he's responding to, remember, is food security in, you know, in like societies and basically in ML countries and societies that were operating on some version of Marxist-Leninism or Maoism. Okay, that was what Spooky Scary Socialist had brought up. This just says that in the 1980s, the Soviet Union was a grain importer. And the last thing he said that it took them a while to recover from the devastation of World War II, though he conveniently left out that context when reading it.
The Soviet Union never achieved food security.
That's not what food security means. When we're talking about food security, we're talking about whether people had enough to eat. Whether there was importing involved in that is not the question. The question is, were people experiencing malnutrition? Were people involved? Like, he doesn't know what food insecurity is.
But you know who did? The United States.
Oh, actually, no. Yeah, actually, the United States at that particular time was having serious food insecurity issues, and they've gotten worse since then.
Hey, baby, because we achieved raw calorie food security in...
Who's we? Because there are entire segments of the population, fairly large segments of the population, who have been experiencing malnutrition and have been malnourished for quite some time.
In the 1890s, and modern nutritional food security by the 1960s.
Yes. So you're saying that there was no food insecurity in the entire country? Because that isn't true.
Spooky's definition of food security is importing more grain than any other country on Earth.
No, that's not the definition of food security. That is how you supply food. The question, food security answers another question, namely, do the people in your society know where their next meal is coming from? Do they know they're going to have enough to eat? If that's imported, but they still, the point is, whether that's imported, whether that's made domestically, it doesn't matter. It does not fucking matter. Because the question is just, are they eating enough?
During a nuclear arms race where any country deciding that they don't fuck with you heavy is a death sentence for hundreds of thousands. And that's not even the only country he lied about. China.
No, but he didn't lie about it. You're talking about completely different things.
China didn't achieve food security until after free market oriented reforms were put
he's using the term food security. I believe he thinks it means food self-sufficiency on the macro level. He doesn't know what this word means.
In place. Vietnam didn't achieve it until similar reforms did.
Oh, okay, now that is wild. Because let's remember what the context of those reforms was. After the U.S. occupied Vietnam, devastated half of the country, killed several million people there, and had to be laboriously kicked out of the country by an indigenous resistance movement, the U.S. immediately pivoted to economic strangulation of Vietnam, cutting off everything that they would need to rebuild. Like, literally, there were examples of neighboring countries or regional countries. Like, India wanted at one point to send them a breeding herd of water buffalo to replenish their water buffalo herds, which are very important to Vietnamese agriculture. I don't know if they still are, but they certainly have been traditionally. And the U.S. immediately put their foot down, forced India to walk that back, and essentially made sure that nobody was sending anything that would help people in Vietnam survive and recover from the devastation that the U.S. caused. The Vietnam had to carry out these reforms in order for the U.S. to release the economic stranglehold even a little bit. That is why suddenly things got so, it wasn't even once these reforms had taken hold. It was that suddenly Vietnam was not completely cut off from international markets.
The same. North Korea has yet to achieve it to this day.
Again, he doesn't know what food security means, and North Korea has the problem, actually, that they do not have good agricultural land to begin with. South Korea got all the best agricultural land in the Korean Peninsula. That has never, that region of the Korean Peninsula has never been been the breadbasket of the area in all of Korean history. What is true is that they have actually done quite a lot to increase agricultural yields.
Are we sensing a pattern of some sort?
Yes, the pattern is you don't know what words mean.
In the Communist Manifesto, Karl Marx states, the theory of the communists can be summed up in a single sentence: abolition of private property. Many people have taken this to mean that communists don't want anyone to own anything, even to the point of sharing our toothbrushes communally. Hey, it's my turn. Oh, okay, here you go. Open wide. 4.
Okay, I have to say I love these animations.
Okay, this is a bit of a side rant. I noticed this guy sneaks the word vor and other unfunny shit into his videos quite a...
As opposed to the wonderful, goofs and gags that this guy puts in when he just throws random slurs in.
He also did it in the beginning of the Stalin video that I watched just to see what other stuff he talks about. I thought these jokes were supposed to be funny. Sir,
they are, unlike whatever the hell this is.
Is just porn. You can't make jokes unless they're funny, and being on the left gives you a -30 modifier to humor. So
because right-wing comics are just so great. They're so hilarious. That's why they get all the big yucks, because they get up on the stage and they just say slurs, and they just state the things that they believe, and they don't make jokes. Clearly the problem is leftists don't have a sense of humor, as opposed to this guy
legally restricting your ability to tell jokes until further notice. And if you go against this mandate, you're a filthy capitalist.
But anyway, if you actually read the manifesto, literally 1 second earlier from that quote, Marx says himself, the distinguishing feature of communism is not the abolition of property generally, but the abolition of bourgeois property. How communists use private property in this context is different from the common definition. Communists don't want to take...
I will say, one of the terminological problems that get in the way of explaining this stuff to people who haven't already been just steeped in it for years, that happens to be one of the easiest ones to fix, is to get rid of this not really even entirely accurate terminological distinction between personal and private property. This doesn't make sense. It doesn't actually say what it does. And personal property is literally a in normal common usage, personal property is one of two types of private property. If it would make much more sense if we just said whether we were talking about abolishing private ownership of natural resources and the means of production, and something like that, because that is the distinction. It isn't that private ownership, it is that private ownership of certain things are being abolished, while private ownership of certain other things is not. we would probably have a much better time explaining this shit if we did not have to back up and use a counterintuitive definition of private property versus personal property that does not make sense to most people who are familiar with how those terms are used in common parlance.
Or your toothbrush are things that you possess. Those are personal property. Private property are things used to make more money and give power to those that own them, like factory, banks, offices, and infrastructure. The abolition of private property means taking those things from private hands and putting them into the hands of the community. To sum it up, communists don't want to segregate your personal property, just the private property of the ruling class.
Yeah, no, this is some bullshit.
Really? Which part is some bullshit?
First off, how do we tell the difference between private and personal property?
He just said, like, the bit that you just played, he explains it.
My car can get me to work so I can make money. My toothbrush makes my breath smell nice so I don't gas the office when I walk in.
Like, he literally gave examples of what he was talking about. So this part of the video, his argument is that he doesn't understand things that were just explained to him in a fairly easy to understand way.
Which stops me from getting fired, because if I did get fired, I couldn't make money. If you push all of these things to their logical conclusions, there is no difference. And that
yes, there is a fucking difference. There is obviously a difference between a toothbrush that you use for personal hygiene and a factory that other people do the work in, that allows you to control people's access to the things that that factory makes. Like, it is obviously different.
That's by design. Because if you can draw a line between it
You can draw a line! He drew a line! It was a very clear line. That's why you're having to argue that there's no difference between owning a toothbrush and owning Amazon.
Making money, then the government has the right to seize it. On top of that, this is not only extremely authoritarian, it's also hypocritical.
Okay, it's extremely authoritarian not to want the means of human survival, the means of, the natural resources, the land, the places that where we make the things that we need, to be under the control of unaccountable, unelected private tyrannies. That's authoritarian. Having it under the control of unelected, unaccountable private tyrannies is not authoritarian?
Because in order to seize private property, you need to have a government. And anyone...
No, you don't really.
...in government is by default the ruling class.
No, okay. Like,
and this ruling class...
It is amazing how many of these videos you can watch where people are like, debunking socialism or whatever, and they put zero thought into it. Like, maybe he should try dividing his time between playing whatever game this is and trying to respond to these videos so he could maybe take it in and understand it before reacting to it.
Which will exist whether you like it or not, are not bound by anything to actually redistribute the private property. They have zero incentive to do so.
But under communism, wouldn't a janitor be paid the same as a doctor? Doesn't that discourage innovation?
I mean, under communism, there's no money, so nobody's actually getting paid per se, but okay.
Like every single argument against communism, this one completely misunderstands what it is. What the question misunderstands is that socialism, which is probably what was meant, doesn't mean everyone is paid the same, just that everyone has common ownership of the means of production. And as I'll cover in the next section, there are more things than just money that incentivize humans. As for innovation, just ask yourself which country went to space first. Which country industrialized at a rapid pace, turning from a backward semi-feudal country to a world superpower? If you're looking for innovation in socialist countries...
Which country, for example, invented a type of drinking glass that is practically unbreakable and more lightweight than conventional glasses that you would find in your average kitchen cupboard or pub? That was East Germany. It's called Superfest. Superfestes Glas. Severit is the name of the substance that they came up with. It was absolutely amazing. It is totally unbreakable, and the result of that is that the company that made it went under after the wall fell, and the inventors abandoned the patent because nobody wanted to sell glass that wouldn't break, because you want people to keep coming back. Yeah, I know. I agree, Emily's. In fact, I have actually kind of tried, especially on my other stream, to occasionally, like, play a game and talk about shit and react to a video. I can't do that. This guy can't do it either. At least he can't do it well, because he doesn't understand anything that's being said. He's just, like, giving the same tired talking points over and over again without regard to the fact that they're actually being debunked here.
There's plenty there. Historical examples of socialism, like the Soviet Union, have provided free healthcare, education, subsidized housing that foster an environment for learning. On the other hand, capitalism gives you extortionate prices for healthcare, thousands of dollars in student loan debt, and rent payments to your parasitic landlord. Imagine how many possible scientists or visionaries have died before they could achieve anything because they were unlucky enough to be born in a poor family under capitalism.
You could say the same thing about someone who was born in Ukraine during the Holodomor. He would have...
Wait.
Been so great if he didn't starve to death at 3 years old.
That isn't really... Yes. Yes, a lot of people die in famines. Famines are a bad thing. Are you saying that that the only famines have been the ones that have happened in, like, the Soviet Union, China, the DPRK? Or could it be that there are actually famines in other countries too, and sometimes much worse famines?
With profits, capitalism also often ignores and discourages science, like in the case of oil companies denying climate change. Any innovation that does take place is usually for the benefit of the capitalists, not us. Ask yourself why, when a new machine or program that can replace workers gets created, workers get laid off. The answer is that capitalists are calling the shots and want to cut costs to make sure that they can make as much profit as possible. Under socialism, where there's common ownership of the means of production, this type of innovation wouldn't result in layoffs, but rather pay raises and less working hours. Why would the workers fire themselves?
Alright, that's cool, bro. These aren't valid arguments because the...
Okay, why is that not a valid argument?
These things are not products of capitalism.
What is not product? Okay, what things are not products of capitalism?
Our healthcare is not expensive because it needs to be. It's because the cost of medical care in the U.S. as a whole is so inflated that it's basically mandatory as...
Well, yes, and why is it so inflated, though? Why is it so inflated? Could that be something to do with the fact that everybody has to make a profit off of it? The insurance companies, the pharma companies, the private hospitals, everybody is trying to take a percentage, and the result is that shit is through the roof? Hello, Aliana on the new phone. Are you new here?
Paying for insurance is much easier than getting smacked with a $4,000 bill.
The thing is, you get to do both. Well, welcome, and let me just give you the Discord link as well. How'd you find us? I'm always curious because so few people do. Oh, cool. Cool. And I'm just going to drop a couple of links related to some ongoing projects that I've got going on that I like to tell people about. I'm going to just drop these in chat. Including, we've got right now, because a friend of mine accidentally bought a whole bunch of 1 month $10 tier gift subs to my Patreon. Just accidentally bought them, so I have a whole bunch of $10 tier 1 month gift subs to give away on my Patreon. And if you follow that link, that last one there, you can get some. Welcome, it's good to see you, and where are you joining us from, if I may ask?
For closing the door on your fucking shin. These prices got inflated because lobbyists and corporations were able to bribe the government, which...
Wait, okay, but that's capitalists. Oh, Toronto! Haven't been there in ages.
Is inherently authoritarian and not capitalist.
Wait, Wait, if it's not if it's authoritarian, it's not capitalist? Is that what he just said?
Which allowed them to charge for a massive profit. This isn't capitalism.
How is it not capitalism?
It's corruption, and if we're going...
Oh, it's... Okay, so when private companies maximize their profits, that's not capitalism, chat. That's not capitalism.
Going blow for blow, I'd say capitalism has been able to withstand corruption a lot better than communism.
Well, it certainly has a lot of occasion to.
Good.
So, like, okay, so the idea here is it's not capitalism, it's corruption. And the result of that corruption is that there's a whole side grift in making you pay hundreds of dollars a month for insurance that may or may not actually help you out when you need it, but they do want your money one way or another in order to deal with the fact that all the profit being made in healthcare makes it all extremely expensive. So his argument there is just, if it's bad, it's not capitalism. That is his entire argument.
Communism will never work because of human nature. Humans are too greedy and lazy to do stuff unless we had a monetary incentive like we do in capitalism. Well, let's see. What other incentives could there be besides gaining money and power to get people to do stuff? I don't know. What about survival, bettering another person's life, passion, satisfaction with your work, curiosity, boredom, and output for creativity, necessity, and companionship? What do you think happened before capitalism came about? Did people just sit down in caves and die from hunger because they didn't have any monetary incentive?
Now, I wonder if this guy has ever considered that there was a before capitalism.
I'm hungry. Want to go gather some berries? Are you gonna pay me money? What's that? And speaking of pre-capitalism, humans spent hundreds of thousands of years living in a primitive form of communism where we lived communally. Incentives to work in human nature aren't static things. They're shaped by the mode of production that we live under. If we look at history, there are huge differences in human behavior throughout the world, and to simplify it all down to a monolithic human nature is ridiculous. As the famous saying goes, to look at people in capitalist society...
Okay, it's time to place your bets. What is he going to say to this?
There's a slight issue in your reasoning.
Okay, let's hear it. I'm ready.
Rotato chip. The problem is that while money didn't exist, capital did. And
okay, so what is capital then, if money did not exist?
Free trade also did as well. These things.
Not in the period that Spooky Scary Socialist was just talking about. Trade was not really a thing because these were hunter-gatherer societies. Everything was just held communally.
Things incentivize progress. For instance, a fisher who knows he can trade his fish for leather from the neighboring tribe would be more likely to strive to catch more fish.
Hey, what? So what?
This is free market trade, just scaled way down. On top of that, there are some passions that are objectively less beneficial than others.
Yeah, like the passion that led to this video we're watching being made, for example. That was a passion that was not beneficial.
Every profession is of equal value. A capitalist caveman who is disabled could still make stone tablet paintings to trade for goods, and
then he isn't a capitalist. And also, cavemen making stone tablet paintings? Like, do you know what a stone tablet is?
As he honed his craft, he'd be able to secure more goods for his tribe. Now, he'd probably never bring in as much raw value or raw capital as a hunter
so he just thinks any income is capital.
Or a gatherer. But on the other hand, a communist caveman would have no incentive to do this.
Again, this communist caveman. Let's just remember that we are talking about a period where everything was held communally, so in that sense, cavemen are sort of inherently communist in that broader sense of original communism, but let's leave that aside a second. Like, wouldn't the incentive be that you need something to do with your time?
I mean, yeah, he could do it. He likes drawing, but what does it matter? He'll still eat anyways. Who cares?
Yeah, wait, okay, so it's only good. Art is only good if the person doing it would only do it because they need to be able to survive. If art that's freely engaged in by people who just want to do it is somehow inferior. What you need is the coercion of capitalism in order to make great art, apparently.
He wants to better the tribe when he gets the same amount of food either way. That's the reason why.
Well, because people care about people.
Communism and socialism can't work. It isn't because we just don't want to give everyone equal stuff. It's because when you start doing that, people get lazy.
Like, literally, okay, so he's already, this would be the part where you would provide evidence for that, except he doesn't have any, so he's just skipping that.
A common argument against the far left is that, if you think about it, the far left is actually as bad as the far right. I mean, one side advocates social justice and economic equality, while the other side advocates for ethno-states and the subjugation of races of people. Jokes aside, there's an unironic strain of people who believe in horseshoe theory, that the far left is just as bad as the far right because...
Okay, what's this guy going to do? I did not actually expect this to be in the video that he's responding to.
Use violence and stuff. Such compelling evidence. Of course, horseshoe theory completely ignores any sort of deep analysis of communism or fascism. But what about the Nazi Party? Nazi stands for National Socialism, so doesn't that mean they were the same as communists? Yes, that's true, but both the German Nazis and Italian fascists purposely made sure to appear leftist to appeal to the people and muddy the waters. Apparently, they did a good job because centrists are still falling for it to this day. If we look at fascism itself, we can see that it's actually closer to capitalism than it is to communism. Fascism began when capitalists needed to revitalize profits, but were stopped by those pesky unions. So capitalists funded fascism in Italy and Germany, and once in power, those same fascists suppressed communist parties, labor unions, lowered taxes on the rich, outlawed strikes, privatized state-owned companies, and generally supported business. The word of privatization was literally coined to describe fascist policies. To argue that fascism is left-wing...
I mean, that isn't quite right. Because the term that was coined was reprivatization, reprivatisation. And, well, it did describe a fascist policy, namely policy that the Nazi finance ministry pursued. It was not a policy that they originated. They basically decided, see, a number of banks had been taken under state ownership because of the various, banks collapsing as a result of the Depression. And the plan, from the start, in the Weimar Republic as well, had been to reprivatize them. And the Nazis continued doing that, and they described this as Reprivatisation, reprivatization. Are CEOs and corporate executives not lazy? I guess they must not be, because they don't do stuff, but they make a lot of money, and apparently making a lot of money makes you not lazy. I don't fucking know. This guy, this is like, actually, it's funny, because this is, I was about to say, ironically, this is really one of the laziest attempts to sort of take down communism that I've ever seen. Like, he doesn't even try. He just changes the subject half the time.
Or the same as communism would be to ignore who supported fascism and what fascism did. In reality, instead of a horseshoe, I would argue that ideology is more of a official, with the far right sharing more in common with the centrists, who are ready to support fascism as soon as profit levels drop.
Some holier than thou. He was cooking there for a second when he said...
More in common with the centrists, who are ready to support fascism as soon as profit levels drop.
See, he was cooking there for a second when he said that a horseshoe theory is flawed, but then he started on some holier than thou retardation. The whole...
Okay.
Point of horseshoe theory is that it doesn't matter what your goals are. The minute you're willing to trample on your fellow man to get to
no, that is not what
them, you are in the wrong. For instance,
no, that is not what horseshoe theory is about. It's never like horseshoe theory. The people who support horseshoe theory are fine with trampling on your fellow man. The issue from the point of view of the proponents of horseshoe theory is that there is this imaginary center. It happens to be wherever they are politically. They don't do anything to objectively determine what this center might be by like looking at public opinion or anything like that. The center is just stuff that they agree with. And the idea is merely that the farther you get away from this notional center, the worse you are, and that therefore, if you're, it isn't the direction you're going in. It isn't what you're doing, what your goals are. It is the distance from this notional center, and that therefore, like, fascists and communists are the same. That is horseshoe theory.
Income equality sounds good until you realize that someone that works in the mines year-round being paid the same amount as a barista makes 0 cents.
Why does it make zero sense?
Social justice sounds great until you realize that there are just some people who are just genuinely bad people.
Okay, it's sounding like you don't actually have an objection to trampling on your fellow man. You have very specific people you would like to trample on.
Through and through, who take pleasure in hurting others. And oppression, in this context, sounds bad until you realize that the far left's definition of oppression is being forced by their mom to make an account on Indeed.com. So...
On in what?
The far left's definition of oppression is being forced by their mom to make an account on Indeed.com. So while he...
what is... Does Indeed.com?
He is correct that the far left and the far right aren't the same. Horseshoe theory beat his ass in this case, because it's not measuring the intent of people on each side, but the methods used to achieve them.
No, it isn't measuring... It isn't actually measuring the methods either. Because there is... the methods are quite different. There is a difference between enslaving and exterminating entire ethnic groups and democratizing the economy. Those are different methods, actually.
Only way to instate communism is through authoritarianism, forcing people to comply.
Wait, okay, because in capitalism, he explained that he thinks that capitalism is the opposite of authoritarianism because capitalists force you to comply in capitalism. You see, you're forced to comply in capitalism by the fact that if you don't make money for capitalists, you will starve. And that's what makes what you do good. Because if you should decide to do it freely, that's bad because it's authoritarian. I don't know what the fuck this guy's arguing. I don't think he knows what the fuck he's arguing.
Seizing property, that's authoritarian, which makes it a horseshoe. And when in...
Yeah, it is authoritarian and therefore it is a horseshoe. I wonder if maybe capitalists seized a whole bunch of property in order to make capitalism happen in the first place. What if they enclosed the fields and forests from which millions of people in their countries, on which millions of people in their countries depended, just to make it so that they would be forced to work in these shitty factories in order to survive?
Antifa uses the same fear-mongering tactics as white supremacist groups, with the mainstream media all but refusing to acknowledge their existence until...
I mean, that's not true. In fact, if you actually look at what the mainstream media are saying, they actually fearmonger about anti-fascist community defenders, while credulously reporting out, like, for the whole time, all the neo-Nazi mobilizations of, like, 2015 to 2019, the media would always credulously report that, the head Nazi of whatever group was saying, we're going to be very peaceful and stuff. And they would not, they would never muse on the fact that the same group had a history of stabbing attacks and shit at every other rally that they put together.
It becomes so obvious that they're forced to say, oh, well, I mean, Antifa does exist, but it's actually a good thing, guys.
It literally is a good thing, and that's not how you pronounce it.
Makes me wonder if this guy is either blind or schizophrenic, because there's...
Wow, okay, lovely. The ableism continues.
No other explanation for his blatant blue-washing of history. On top of that, he argues that...
Blue-washing of history? Like, what, with Santa Flush?
Fishhook theory is more accurate because of the center's tendency to take all-right opinions on certain issues. This is fucking dumb because...
because it's true.
A white supremacist could do the exact same thing the other way around, and they'd have a lot more ammo to work with considering how leftist the mainstream media...
Wait, okay, so he's saying that white supremacists have a point.
Tech, etc. have been for the past 20 years. For instance, I could make a leftist fishhook because people in the center treat other races as equals, and as such, we...
No, wait, in what center is that? See, this is what I was just saying. The point is, when you like take the center is actually meaningless. It is fictional. Fictitious, rather.
Could make the assertion that any ideology that refuses to acknowledge a superior race is inherently far left. Yeah, this shit is basically the...
I mean, there are people who actually do argue that. Like, Nazis do argue that. They will actually say that, like, if you believe in racial equality, that is communism.
I made myself the Chad Wojak in political compass form.
This is another reason that fascism and communism are always incorrectly depicted to be two sides of the same coin. In fact, it's the central idea in a bunch of other arguments like communism is always implemented incorrectly, or communism only works on paper. If communism only works on paper, it's a good thing I live in paper.
Did this dude just fucking dab? This video is not from 2016, it's from 2020. I don't care if it's ironic. You deserve the electric chair for this joke.
These three arguments are essentially the same thing, so that's why I'm mushing them together into the same section. The idea that communism is inherently authoritarian is misleading, because it only developed these things after capitalism tried to crush it. In 1918 to 20, 14 capitalist nations invaded Soviet Russia to overthrow the communists, with the years of this civil war intensifying the Bolshevik siege mentality. The same pattern of imperialist capitalist powers invading to protect capital can be seen in other countries that try to move beyond capitalism. The Spartacist uprising in Germany was suppressed by the Suckdems with fascist paramilitary forces in 1919.
Yeah.
Bologna was crushed by fascists in the Spanish Civil War in 1939. Cuba in 1961 suffered from an invasion, and afterwards, decades of terrorism from the U.S. Chile in 1973, Nicaragua in 1986, the Vietnam and Korean Wars, and so much more. As we can see, capitalism will stop at nothing, even going as far as supporting fascism if it means stopping communism from threatening the flow of capital. The reality is that revolutionary countries are not going to be allowed to develop a socialism that is unhindered. Instead, what we see is a sort of siege socialism, with authoritarian measures being adopted just to fight back the onslaught of the West. In the whole context, we can see that the totalitarianism of communism is not a natural development, but an unnatural one caused by the constant...
Yeah, like, I mean, I don't know that I would necessarily say, that it is all 100% just a response to it, but I think it is definitely a part of it. And the reality is that we literally have not actually seen an attempted communist society in conditions other than siege from, the U.S. in particular. Like, and so naturally what we're seeing is going to be a product, at least in part, of that siege. If you were, you look at what the U.S. did in response to a much smaller threat, like after 9/11. The massive authoritarian binge that the ruling class went on with the Patriot Act, that was sold to us as temporary emergency restrictions on human rights. They're only going to be up for a few years. It's okay. Don't worry about it. And they've been in place for over a generation now. And that is not for anything approaching the sort of threat that, say, Cuba has been under from the United States. So, yeah, I mean, we cannot pretend that that is not part of what's going on there. That does not produce, that does not necessarily produce distortions in the societies. But I'm noticing the time, and it is actually time for me to wrap up. Thank you so much for everyone who's joining in, and welcome, Aliana. Always nice to see new faces in chat. I will be back tomorrow at 11:30 p.m. U.S. Eastern Time, and I look forward to seeing you all there. Have a good night, and I'm going to get a glass of water because I'm actually kind of parched.